Hey everybody, this is Tad Bradley, the voice of Oz here, coming to you from Seattle, Washington. I hope you're all having a great start of spring and are enjoying some good weather wherever you may be. Happy early Easter to everybody as well. We're going to get started here in just a second, just waiting for a few more people to join. If you have questions, you can enter them in the questions pane on the control panel on the right-hand side of your screen. I will try to answer all the questions at the end of the presentation. You can also always send me an email or shoot me or give me a call if you have specific questions that aren't answered during the presentation. Feel free to do that anytime. So I think we will get started here and get you guys the latest updates from Imvelo. I'm going to try to do this in about 40 minutes. We're not going to do a full presentation and deep dive on every single property. We're going to really just go through the latest updates on each individual property and as well as what's happening with Imvelo in general. But we'll start off with the biggest product development in Zimbabwe that really goes beyond Imvelo itself, and that is that, if you haven't heard, if you've been living under a rock, that after 37 years, Uncle Bob is finally gone. Bye bye Bob. He was pushed into retirement mercifully back in November after 37 years, as I said, by the military and a really truly a celebratory and thankful nation. It was quite an amazing thing to see a completely peaceful and celebratory feeling throughout the country when this all happened. Today, the mood in Zimbabwe is very positive and optimistic. Some might say ecstatic, as the Times here says. I mean, you know, Zimbos are almost always positive and optimistic, let's be honest, but they are especially optimistic at the moment with the change in government. New President Mnangagwa is reportedly rooting out some of the endemic corruption in the government, as well as working to secure new investment to get the economy moving again. He will likely call elections during the North American summer. I've heard July. To quote another famous president, we'll see what happens with that, but all indications are that it's going to be a peaceful and orderly election, much like the transition of power from Mugabe to Mnangagwa was entirely peaceful. I love the headline from the Metro, "Hip Hip Harare," and one of my favorite, if not my favorite phrase from Zimbabweans, the country truly is happy as Larry with Mugabe gone. So exciting times all around. I don't need to give anybody in the travel industry a geography lesson. You all know where Zimbabwe is, but we're going to focus today on the northwest corner of Zimbabwe, where Imvelo has all of their operations. There's 6 lodges and camps. There's 2 reasons for the fact that Imvelo focuses just on northwest Zimbabwe. The first is that that's what they know. Mark Butcher was a Hwange park ranger. Mark Butcher, the owner and director of Imvelo, was a Hwange park ranger 30 years ago when he started his career in wildlife, and so he intimately knows and loves that park. And then furthermore, it's very easy to connect Victoria Falls with Hwange by road, by rail, which we'll talk more about very soon, as well as by air in a nice 7 to 10 day package. So very cost effective as well. So nothing against Monopools and Matobos, Ghana, which are all amazing destinations in their own right. But today we're just about that northwest corner and getting you the latest information on Imvelo's camps there. So another relatively new development, again, if you haven't heard, there's a new airport, or an upgraded airport, I should say, in Victoria Falls. You can see on your screen there, international terminal was expanded, and the new runway extended, avionics improved to allow long-haul jets to land. Now I'm paging Emirates, Qatar, or British Airways, please. But as of yet, none of those big boys from the Middle East or from Europe have yet to start flying direct into VFA. But there are more and more flights directly into the falls from other African destinations, both in Southern Africa as well as now East Africa. One of the favorites of mine is the Airlink flight that now connects Cape Town direct into Victoria Falls International 6 times a week, which is a great way now to cut out Joburg and connects Cape Town and the Falls very easily. And the times are excellent as well, at arriving at 11:45 a.m., meaning you can get to Safari easily for the afternoon. The Otis flight from Ethiopian has been around. It was the first new flight to come into the airport after it reopened, and that's been a pretty popular option. Is 4 times a week now from Addis Ababa to Victoria Falls, and now being able to connect East Africa and Nairobi directly into Vic Falls, as well as then onward to Cape Town 3 times a week into VFA, but also 4 times, the other 4 days of the week, it goes into Livingston. So you have a daily connection now between Nairobi, Vic Falls, and Cape Town, which is fantastic. That makes trying to plan those 2-week Pan-African safaris, but including East Africa and Southern Africa, a little bit easier when you have that flight. So as I mentioned, and hopefully as you know, Imvelo operates 6 lodges and camps in northwest Zimbabwe between Hwange and Victoria Falls. I'm not going to go into serious detail on each individual camp, but rather focus on what's new. But first, I wanted to start with one of the most exciting activity developments recently announced by Imvelo. Hopefully, many of you are already familiar with their one-of-a-kind Elephant Express rail car, which connects their lodges in the south of Hwange, Bomani, and Camelthorn, with Hwange Main Camp and the Det railway station there near Hwange Main Camp. It's been hugely successful, incredibly popular with guests. They absolutely love it. It's so much fun, and I highly encourage you to try to work in the Elephant Express as an activity, really look at it as an activity, not a transfer, into your itineraries in Zimbabwe with Imvelo. But Imvelo is now taking this rail concept even further and embracing the romance of those intrepid glory days of train travel across Africa. And on May 21st, Imvelo will launch the first and only private overnight sleeper train for tourists connecting Victoria Falls and Hwange. And we are calling that the Stimela Star. Really exciting. They have scheduled 10 set departures for 2018, starting with the first one, as I mentioned, on May 21st, and 9 more through November. A bit more about the train cars and the experience itself. Imvelo has renovated and upgraded 3 rail cars from Zimbabwe National Railways. They've taken the best of the existing premier class coaches and upgraded them to make them even better. To be clear, these aren't upgraded to 5-star luxury Rovos rail standards per se, but rather comfortable 3 to 4-star accommodations. And they're really, it's all about, full of character. I love the wood trim you see there, which is just gives it that throwback feel. It's full of those kind of character touches, as well as all of that historic charm that comes with rail travel in Africa. There are going to be 2 private sleeping cars, as well as a dining car, and an optional dancing coach with a teak dancing floor for private groups if you're booking the Stimela Star on a private basis and you have a private group that really likes to party. You can ask about the dancing coach. And those 3 or 4 cars, if you're doing the dancing coach, hook up to the existing overnight passenger rail service that runs nightly between Victoria Falls and Bulawayo. So as far as logistics, on those 10 dates, guests board our train at 6 p.m. for sundowner drinks and appetizers, with a scheduled departure at around 7 p.m. Again, this is an African train, so 7 p.m. is ish. There'll be a 3-course dinner following that, and then following dinner, nightcaps in the bar car, along with stories and entertainment and mingling with the Imvelo professional guides that's on board, as well as other passengers, before heading off to sleep for the night. The train arrives into Det Station near Hwange Main Camp sometime in the middle of the night, around midnight probably, and this is where the Stimela Star, our 3 cars, are then detached and shunted into the station, while the rest of the passenger train, the regular passenger train, continues on to Bulawayo through the night. So the train car, our 3 cars, then stay in the Det Station for the remainder of the night. Whether people are sleeping or carrying on in the bar car, that's up to them. And then the following morning, breakfast is served at 7 a.m. and pickups begin from the train at Det Station at 8 a.m. So here's a few more details as I just went through most of them. As I said, 10 set departures. There are 2 carriages that sleep 12 each, so 24 maximum. As I mentioned, for private departures, that is a minimum of 12 or more. So if you have a group of 12, we can set a private departure and talk to me or to Imvelo about dates for that. There are 2 flush loos and a basin and 1 shower per carriage, so it is shared ablutions. Just keep that in mind. There, of course, are the meals, as I mentioned. And important point, you do not have to be staying at an Imvelo property in Hwange to take the Stimela Star, to book the Stimela Star. Any camps in Hwange can book it. They would be picked up again at 8 a.m. from Det and off to whichever property safari camp they're staying at in Hwange. If guests are staying at Imvelo camps, Camelthorn or Bomani, down in the south of the park, they will continue their rail experience, their train trip, via the Elephant Express from Det to Bomani or Camelthorn, arriving about 10:30 in the morning. So if you have any train aficionados on your list, obviously this is an absolute must. It's extremely unique, being able to have this overnight experience and connecting, to amazing safari destinations in Africa. So feel free to reach out to me with questions if you have them. There is a information sheet that was sent out via email a couple of weeks ago. I will send that out to all of those that are registered for the webinar, so you can have that at your fingertips as well. So now on to some updates for the individual camps. So we're going to start in Victoria Falls with Zambezi Sands and Gorges Lodge. Zambezi Sands is an hour from the falls or from the airport. It's about 20 minutes on the Kazangula Road to Botswana, and then about a 40-minute game drive through the park to the property. Gorges, on the other hand, is downstream of the falls and is about 40 minutes from town, either the town or the airport. We'll start with Zambezi Sands and get you updated on what's new there. Zam Sands, if you haven't visited, is set in one of the most peaceful and serene stretches of river along the Zambezi. It's a beautiful camp in truly an idyllic setting. The new items there, 2 new tents were added in 2017 now, for a total of 10 of these massive Bedouin-style tents, all that have private plunge pools and private decks, all face the river or are located on the river. And you can hear the gurgling of the permanent rapid that's right in front of camp. So it's a beautiful white noise that's constantly happening there on the property. And there are 2 connected units, numbers 3 and 4, which make for a nice family unit if you have families that are traveling together. So keep that in mind. And as I said, all of them have their own private splash pool and huge decks in front, which are great for coffee in the morning, drinks in the evening, and of course luxuriating in that private plunge pool in the hot afternoons. Speaking of luxuriating, we are announcing, actually in this webinar, you haven't yet been announced via Imvelo on email, but you'll be looking for that in the next week or so, brand new pop-up spas, which will be opening on April 1st at Zambezi Sands, Gorges, and Camelthorn in Hwange. Then just to be clear again from the outset, these are not full-service spas. They will be done either in the guest rooms or on their private deck, or in 1 or 2 beautiful outdoor locations like you can see on your screen on that sandbank on the Zambezi near Zambezi Sands. The spa menu is also fairly limited and simple, with foot, head, and shoulder neck massages and a basic manicure or pedicure. But the prices really reflect the pop-up nature and the limited nature of the spa, as all treatments are $25 per person, except for the foot massage, which is only $15 per person. And most importantly, this concept aligns with Imvelo's long-standing commitment and ethos to empowering their local communities and local people through tourism. So they've actually gone out and hired and handpicked and hired local people from surrounding each of the lodges, and then trained them up by professionals in Victoria Falls, and now they are our spa therapists at those 3 properties. So really it's about a little bit of additional pampering for your guests, enhancing the safari experience while giving back to the local communities, which again just aligns with Imvelo's ethos all around as a company. Spa treatments can be pre-booked by you as an agent, or your guests can also schedule and pay for them directly on site. They just have to book them the night prior, and then they'll determine where they'll be doing it. So look out for more information on that as well. Coming, like I said, in probably the next week, I have information sheets as well if you would like them for more details. Now, while it's not new, canoeing on the Zambezi from Zam Sands is so much fun and really the featured activity at the property. I wanted to highlight it. The canoeing activity is included in the $5.95 rack rate. Imvelo has their own canoes, and they also are blessed with, pun intended there, he's a professional river and walking guide. He's truly a legend. He recently returned to Zimbabwe after years abroad working with Acelia in Mozambique, as well as the head guide at Oliver's camp in Tarangire in Tanzania. And as with anything involving wildlife, and certainly with canoeing, safety is the first priority. You can see Blessed there giving a safety briefing to his guests. And with a little bit of tutelage, though, he can really turn just about anybody into rock star kayakers, as you can see there. Those are the rapids that are right in front of Zambezi Sands. And while they look really like rock stars, it's really more just kind of bobbing over those rapids. But honestly, most people look a little bit more like these guests when they're out canoeing versus those rock star kayakers, and they prefer the more tranquil and serene channels, which there's plenty of right in front of Zambezi Sands. But regardless, Blessed is truly a legendary guide, and we're lucky to have him. He's a huge asset to Zambezi Sands, so I encourage you to encourage your guests to get out on the river with him. As I mentioned, the rack rate is $5.95 both for 2018 as well as for 2019. There's no increase, and that it does include all of those activities by river or by land, which canoeing is one of them, as well as walking safaris and obviously game drives, and then the guided tour of the falls. Just a reminder as well for Zam Sands and Gorges, which I'll talk about next. They are fantastic properties for guests who want to get out of Victoria Falls, who don't want to hear helicopters all the time, who aren't into all of the activities in the falls, who want a little more peaceful, slow, laid-back retreat. They don't need all the action that's happening in the falls. They don't need to go shopping. They don't need to go out to dinner. If they want to make a trip into the falls, to do the tour, of course, that's great. But we have found that those people that really want all that action, they're much better served to be staying somewhere in town, whereas for Zambezi Sands and Gorges, it's a really great way to escape all of that activity of the falls and retreat to these beautiful locations. Speaking of a beautiful location, Zambezi Sands is one upstream of the falls, and here's Gorges, 11 kilometers downstream of the falls, located on the spectacular, stunning Batoka Gorge. There's a sunrise view over the Batoka, which each one of the chalets as well as the main lodge enjoys. What's new, obviously pop-up spas I mentioned earlier will be launched April 1st, so you can have this view while you're getting a massage or a pedicure or a manicure. Also, Little Gorge's tented extension, which isn't brand new. This happened about a year and a half ago, but just a reminder, there are 5 tents that were added to Gorges along the Dibu Dibu Gorge on the side there, you can see, just next to the main Batoka Gorge. And really the main differences between the properties is just the style of accommodation. The level of luxury is the same, but obviously Little Gorges is tented, main Gorges is stone chalets. And if guests prefer to do everything down at Little Gorges, they can eat, they can spend all their time down at this camp. It's great for small groups of 10 or so taking over the camp. If they want to use the pool or have a slightly better Wi-Fi connection, then they need to come up to the main lodge. That's only about a 10-minute walk from the last tent at Gorges through these beautiful indigenous gardens at main Gorges. So really today it's also a lot about availability, what's available. Here's a shot of the exterior of those new tents in a beautiful traditional Serengeti style tents up on decks. As I mentioned, the interior's on par with main Gorges, about a 4.5 star level. And what really sets Gorges apart is the view, and every single one of the 15 units, whether the new tented units at Little Gorges or the main chalets at main Gorges, all of them have this spectacular view over the Batoka Gorge with the sunrise as well. Rack rates, $368 for 2018, $380 for 2019, so still a really fantastic value. That includes 5 activities, 2 per day. You can see them there on your screen. It includes a daily trip into the falls as well. But again, if people want to be in the falls doing all that action, I suggest you look at booking something in the falls town itself and look at Gorges as a way to retreat and escape the constant helicopter traffic you get in town. All right, we're going to head off to Hwange National Park on safari now, and our first stop will be Nhimba Lodge, which is located in the northern part of Hwange, near the Stimela area. If you haven't been to Hwange, the northern part has entirely different topography to the south. It's hilly, there's big kopis, Mopani forests, and the south of the park is as flat as a billiard table, as the Zimbos like to say. So you really can combine the north and the south for 6 to 7 nights, and it's not going to be duplication by any means. Nahimba, some of the new things happening with Nahimba. There were 2 new tents added in 2017 for a total now of 9 tents around this amazing waterhole, which you'll see in a minute. And there's a new airstrip opened as of last year, Giraffe Springs, which is 20 minutes from the lodge. So if guests can now fly in from Vic Falls, seat rates are $250 using Alt Air, which is Imvelo's preferred charter company. So nice rate as well, and a nice way to avoid the long. It's about a 5-hour road transfer. Three hours of that is a game drive, but it is still a long trip from VFA. So a good way to skip that is to fly one direction at least from the falls. As I mentioned, Nahimba is set around this really highly productive waterhole. It's one of the first waterholes that the wildlife, in particular the elephants, hit as they're migrating from the south of Hwange, as the water dries up in the dry season. And this waterhole is really the first point they hit. This crush of elephants right around the main lodge there is their favorite part of the waterhole, is the favorite drinking trough, which of course is the swimming pool. And in the dry season, toward the end, it becomes really their drinking trough, no longer a swimming pool. They drain it twice a day. Many guests end up just staying at the lodge instead of going out on game drives to take in this incredible wildlife spectacle that you get from the main lodge. Getting pictures like this in front of the elephants as they're drinking after dinner is a given from about July on through October, or until the first rains hit. So it's a pretty extraordinary wildlife experience. If you have elephant aficionados, Nahimba is an absolute must to work into your itinerary. As I said, there are now 9 tents all set around this water hole and the pool. And the rack rate, again, is holding for 2019, $595. It's on par with Zambezi Sands. Lots of activities there in the north, including visiting the Mandavu Dam or going out to the Nahimba Seeps, which is a really special place to witness one of the only natural sources of water in Hwange National Park, and a great place for sundowners and amazing sunset views. We talked briefly about the Elephant Express earlier. I won't go into a ton of detail, but as far as logistics, you can always talk to me if you have questions about it. But just to say, definitely talk to me or Imvelo about how best to work in the Elephant Express, because it is such a fun experience for guests. Being able to walk around on the train, it's spacious. There's, of course, drinks and snacks and lunch being served. Kids love to drive the train. Adults love to drink and drive the train. And you're doing game viewing the whole way. There isn't a animal alive that remembers the days before those train tracks, because Cecil Rhodes laid those back in 1904 along the eastern boundary of what would become the eastern boundary of Hwange National Park. So for the wildlife, the train has always been there, and they just they pay it no mind. As you can see, the elephants are often causing traffic jams, or the lions causing traffic jams. They really don't respect the Elephant Express too much. It's too much of a toy train. They do get out of the way for the big freight trains that come through, however. All right, so a few quick updates on Bomani and Camelthorn. Just real quickly, this is the logistics of the Elephant Express leaving from Det. It's 80 kilometers dead straight down to Bomani and Camelthorn, and it takes about 2.5 hours. So it departs in the afternoon at 2 p.m., so guests get into camp about 4:30, just in time for sundowners. And here is one of those camps in the southeast, Bomani Tented Camp. A couple of new things there, a brand new family suite that opened last August called the Sable Family Suite. We also have a new pool and newly refurbished saddle-built tents. I'll be showing you some photos. Here's the new Sable suite set under a beautiful Camelthorn tree. You have 2 in-suite bedrooms with a connecting lounge, so a traditional family suite as is expected these days. Very comfortable, again, in that 4.5 star level. There's the bedroom of the family suite. And now the brand new saddle-built tents, which were all rebuilt and renovated last year. There are now 5 of those saddle-built tents all with the new interiors. Basically, Imvelo has now leveled the level of luxury in each of the units between the saddle bills and the spur wing tents. So the rack rate is now the same, $419 across the board. And then the brand new pool. So this makes Bomani an even better option for families. Now you have the big family suite as well as this pool. No word yet as to whether this has become an elephant drinking trough, but we'll find out. I'll be headed to Zimbabwe in about a month and a half. And here's the layout of Bomani with that Sable suite on the far left there. Those are the spur wing suites. There are 4 of them. We've also got a thatched bungalow, which we used to use as a family suite, but is really good for people that need air conditioning because it does have aircon. And then you have your 5 saddle bill tents. These all look out over this really amazing waterhole, whereas the saddle bill tents look out over the plains. Bomani is really your classic old school safari camp. It's set right on the edge of Hwange Park on the Ngamo Plains. It has a hugely productive game viewing area on both sides of the railway line, and the waterhole itself is also really productive with lots and lots of wildlife coming through the camp. It's also on a private concession, so you can do night drives and you can go off-roading on the Bomani concession. Now moving over to Camelthorn, which is about 10-15 minutes from Bomani around the southeast corner of the park. Unlike Bomani, it's nestled into a beautiful forest instead of set on the plains. It's just 250 meters from the park itself, and it's set around this beautiful namesake Camelthorn tree, this incredibly massive and ancient tree, which looks particularly beautiful when it's lit up at night with hanging paraffin lamps. Give it a very romantic feel to it. What's new, horseback riding safaris, as well as that pop-up spa. And Camelthorn really has that feel of a cozy forest lodge. Here's the interior of one of the 8 forest villas. During the cold Hwange winters, especially in June and July, it can get frosty in Hwange, and those fireplaces really come in handy in the evenings, and then overnight and into the mornings. You need a lot fewer hot water bottles when you have a roaring fire to warm up the room. It's quite a different feel than Bomani. So Bomani is much more for those safari purists, and Camelthorn is slightly more upmarket, and like I said, it has that feel of a very cozy forest lodge. So brand new as of March 1st at Camelthorn, and also for Bomani guests, is the horseback riding safaris, which we've just launched. And like the pop-up spas and like everything with Imvelo, really, the horseback riding connects to the communities as well as shows the commitment that Imvelo has to experiential safaris and really getting guests out of the safari vehicle and meeting local people, getting your feet on the ground in Africa. And we've partnered with Hwange Horseback Safaris, which is owned by Dennis and Sharon Nell. They are among the pioneers of horseback safaris in Zimbabwe, have an incredible safety record, and really a thriving stable of beautiful and well-behaved horses, which I will test out in May when I'm there. I am generally kryptonite for horses, so we'll see how well-behaved they are when I'm there. And in line with Imvelo's ethos, as I mentioned, this activity has also been brought to life in partnership with our communities, which is a key core of everything Imvelo does. The stables are located on community land, as is Camelthorn Lodge, of course, and many of the rides will also be done on community land. So you'll have opportunities to connect with local people and the wildlife while on horseback. There's 1 ride for beginners, and then there are 4 rides for intermediate to advanced riders, which range from an hour to full-day safaris on horseback. There's also the option of customizing a horseback riding safari that not only visits Camelthorn, but also up into northern Hwange. So contact me or Imvelo if you have horseback riding aficionados and you want to put together a specific horseback safari in Hwange Park. Rack rates for Bomani and Camelthorn, $595 for Camelthorn and $419 for Bomani for 2018. That includes all of your activities you see, and one of the core things here is our village and school visits. We're now going to head down to Bomani Camp, which is located in the very far south of the park. It is one of the most remote camps in Zimbabwe. Definitely the most remote camp in Hwange, about 100 miles from any other property. It is really a wild and woolly place out under the stars in Josie. You'll find you feel like in many ways you're kind of on the edge of the earth, as one guest said. So if you're looking for some place to escape and feel that remote wilderness feel, this is the place to do it. There are going to be 2 new tents as of July this year, so a total of 5. There's also, hopefully, fingers crossed, a new airport opening, which is only 10 minutes from Josie. Currently, for guests that fly into Josie, you fly into Manga, which is the Somalisa airstrip, and it's about a 2-hour game drive from there to the camp. So we'll hopefully have that Lubudi airstrip open this year, which again makes for a nice, easy way to connect Victoria Falls Airport with Josie. So you can still do it, of course. You just have to fly to Manga currently, which isn't a big deal. But stay tuned for more information on that. Josie really is a true adventure camp in the best way, with bucket showers, which I think is a quintessential safari experience. But we do have flush toilets and running water in the basin, so you do have some comforts of home. I love the fact you can put those beds onto wheels, or the beds are on wheels, and you can roll them out onto your big game viewing deck in the front and have that starbed experience like you see in the upper right-hand corner. 2 of the unique activities at Josie are not horseback riding, it's on the brain, mountain biking. So another way to get out of the vehicle and get onto the land and experience Africa in a more intimate way. We do it by mountain biking at Josie, and then we also have a lookup blind, like at Camelthorn and Bomani. There's the first lookup blind that Imvelo did, where you can get those incredible toenail level shots of elephants from about 5 feet away. There's one near Bomani and Camelthorn, and now one also at Josie Benini. So fantastic option for photographers. Rack rate at Josie there, you see 310 for 2018, 380 for 2019. And again, this is a great adventure add-on for either Nahimba Lodge or for Bomani and Camelthorn. And just contact me if you have questions on how best to integrate Josie, but you do need to integrate it with a stay at one of those 2 properties before or after. With the flights, there's a couple of ways to put it all together. So if you have questions or want to brainstorm, I'd love to do it with you. So we'll finish up and wrap up here just to give you the update on all of the amazing work that's happening with Imvelo. And I love to show this picture here because it illustrates their incredible commitment to communities. This was a photo of Camelthorn. It was taken back in 2013 as they were building the lodge. And at that time, there were about 80 people that were working to build the lodge. Roughly 60 of those, both men and women, had never been paid for a day of work in their lives. So you can imagine the power of this lodge and the pride that these men and women felt bringing money back for a hard day's work for the first time at 30 and 40 years old. You can imagine the impact that has on the community. We're building this lodge, and this lodge is built on their land. They had a hand in building it, and they have a strong connection to it. In addition, beyond the employment that Camelthorn and Bomani and all of the Imvelo properties bring, is the social service investments that come from that. Just today, I got an update from Haley at Imvelo that the latest numbers since 2011, Imvelo has sourced and invested nearly $3.5 million in social services for the communities around their lodges. $3.5 million. Think about that in 7 years. It's really an extraordinary number, and the impact is absolutely massive. That $3.5 million is being sourced largely from past guests who have saw the need and wanted to contribute some way, from $10 to $10,000. And those investments are in water. This is an old well that had been abandoned. Unfortunately, Mugabe cut off most of the social services because of lack of funds and other reasons in northwest Zimbabwe. So there was a lot of non-functioning water holes like this. Tourism has filled the gap. Imvelo and other properties have helped to drill water holes around the park. Imvelo alone has drilled over 80 boreholes for local communities over the past 7 years, providing approximately 1,500 school children and 2,200 households with clean drinking water. That's drinking water for something like 14,000 people with those 80 boreholes. An amazing impact. In addition to clean water, they've also been helping with education. This is an old school, obviously not a great learning environment with a hole in the roof. These teachers are trying to teach students that don't have their own desks, and they're sharing pencils and pens, and they're absolute heroes, these teachers, but they aren't able to teach in a proper learning environment because of lack of funds from the central government. So where tourism steps in, Imvelo now has built 8 school blocks since 2011, as well as 11 teachers accommodations. You can't forget about the teachers, of course. They really are absolute heroes. And doing not only exteriors, but also renovating the interiors of existing classrooms to create a proper learning environment. I mean, that could be a kindergarten or a first grade in Seattle or somewhere in Europe. I mean, it is truly a good learning environment for these students to set them off on the best foot possible. Imvelo also has been feeding students, especially during drought years. The drought year of 2015 to 2016, they were feeding 2,800 students per day at 11 different schools for 5 months. And unfortunately, because of the way of our weather these days, droughts are becoming more common, and that's going to likely be not something that just is an occasional occurrence. Luckily this year there have been good rains, so the crops I think are okay, but during years of crop failure, these people are really relying on tourism to feed them. Many of those students, they are only eating 1 meal a day, and it's that meal they get of sudsa and beans at school. And then Imvelo's largest social service investment is in healthcare, the dental safari, which is just finished up its 7th year back in November last year. It happens every November, where 18 Spanish and Italian dentists come down to Zim and spend 2 weeks putting on mobile clinics around Hwange Park and Victoria Falls. Since 2011, they've treated over 12,000 patients. Not a single one of those patients before 2011 had ever seen a dentist before. Not a single one. And today they have annual first world dental care. These kids, oftentimes now, they're just getting their annual checkup where all looks good. They get a toothbrush and some toothpaste, have a big smile on their face, and head off home and say, see you again next year. The impact of this program is absolutely staggering, and something that we're grateful for many past guests for their donations to make it possible to achieve every year. This old guy, unfortunately, he was a little too late for the dentists, but he did get a free pair of spectacles because we've now added optometry to the dental safari, giving away free eyeglasses. And this guy hadn't been able to read for about 10 years, and for the want of a $2 pair of used spectacles. And now over just 2 years, we've treated over 3,000 patients, giving them eye care, including new eyeglasses, as well as in some cases doing major surgeries and getting fundraising for major surgeries to help people with cataracts and other issues. So this really brings it full circle and brings me back to Imvelo's tagline, which is connecting people and nature. Nature, wildlife and animals are absolutely critical to attracting tourists to Zimbabwe and all their parks. We need those tourists, and we connect them, these people, tourists, to nature. But we can't forget about the local people as well. And without the local people, the conservation of wildlife wouldn't happen. They have to be included in this paradigm to see the benefits from the safaris to protect the wildlife. I mean, don't forget that while elephants and lions are beautiful, majestic creatures to us and everybody on safari, for those people living on the border, on the front lines of Hwange Park, elephants and lions are threats to their livelihoods and to their very lives. So without tourism bringing benefits like jobs and those critical social services that Imvelo helps to provide, $3.5 million worth in education, healthcare, clean water, the people really don't have an incentive to protect those lions and elephants. And then the tourists don't come, and we're without a successful conservation and tourism industry. So that trinity, that trifecta of wildlife and nature, of tourists and local people, all three are absolutely critical to making this whole safari industry work in Zimbabwe and elsewhere in Africa, really. And that's what Imvelo endeavors to do. And that's all through support of people like you and your guests. Without them, as I said, without the tourists, we would not be able to do any of this. So thank you for your support. And I hope this was helpful, interesting, educational. If you have any questions about anything that I went through here, I know it was pretty quick, but feel free to shoot me an email or give me a call. Always happy to brainstorm itineraries, ideas, answer questions. I will send this out as a recording, so if you missed any of it or joined late, you can watch the rest of it at your leisure. So enjoy, hopefully, a wonderful Easter weekend. And again, thank you so much for listening and learning a little bit more about Imvelo Safari Lodges in Zimbabwe. Thanks so much. Have a great rest of your day.